If you're in the market for a mid-size pickup truck, now might be the best time ever to buy one. There's a brand new Toyota Tacoma, there's a new Ford Ranger, GMC and Chevy have new versions of their Canyon and Colorado pickup trucks, and even the Jeep Gladiator has just received a facelift. But what about this? This is the 2025 Nissan Frontier. This is the third generation model. It was last given a new generation for the 2021 model year, but 2025 will be the first model year that this generation receives a major update. Can this simple facelift help keep the Nissan competitive against an entire segment full of brand new trucks? Today, that's what we're going to find out. So let's start with a walk around of our 2025 Nissan Frontier. So this is the third generation of the Frontier. The second generation, you may remember, got so long in the tooth because Nissan just never replaced it. They did some facelifts and stuff like that along the life cycle, but that truck lasted from 2005 all the way until 2021 when this finally came out. And this is a pretty good looking truck. I said that when it first came out, and I still think it does look pretty nice. It has a very square, macho looking front presence, even on this SL trim, which is not the most rugged one that you can get. They have the Pro X and Pro 4X that are more off-roady. I think this blue actually looks really great. There's a new color called Afterburner Orange. Unfortunately, it's not available on the SL trim. You have to get one of the Pro trims to get that, but I think it looks absolutely excellent. We do have 17-inch wheels. 16-inch wheels are what's going to come base on this truck. Kind of surprising to see that Nissan didn't put at least an 18-inch wheel on this sort of what is supposed to be the luxury version of the Frontier. So 17 is just looking a little bit small and a little bit dated compared to other vehicles in this segment. You can get the King Cab, which is going to be a lot shorter and doesn't have the rear doors. This is the Crew Cab model, which, if you can tell, now has the available option of a long bed. So this is going to be your 6-foot bed. A 5-foot bed is what comes standard. You used to only be able to get that long bed if you got the King Cab, which you can still get, but if you wanted a Crew Cab, you used to have to get the SV trim. Now you can get it on the Pro X, Pro 4X, and this SL trim, so there is much wider availability of the long bed option, which is great. Gives you a little bit more storage space, about a foot extra, giving you a lot more cargo capacity here in the bed. The only other truck in this segment that is going to give you a 6-foot bed with a Crew Cab body style is the Toyota Tacoma. The Ford Ranger, GMC Canyon, and Chevy Colorado do not offer that feature. Now, as we hop inside the Frontier, I want to remind you that this SL trim that we are testing is technically the highest trim level. It's the most luxurious, although, as we're about to see, it doesn't have quite as many luxury features as you'll find in some other midsize trucks. Now, you can get the Pro X and the Pro 4X with a lot of the same features that you find here, but those are optional. So the Pro 4X is going to come with cloth seats, not the leather that we get standard here on the SL trim, but you can upgrade to leather, in which case the Pro 4X will actually cost more than this SL trim, even though if you just kind of look at the base configurator with the trim levels, the SL is the most expensive trim level, but you can make a Pro 4X more expensive than that, if you catch my drift. Now, we do have a power leather driver's seat here. We have adjustments, and we have lumbar here as well. I believe it's a 6-way adjustment. Pretty comfortable seats because we do have Nissan's zero gravity technology here that always makes their seats so darn comfortable. No ventilated seats available whatsoever here on the Frontier. So that's one of those things, remember I mentioned, doesn't have quite as many features as some of its competitors. We do, of course, have push button start to go ahead and start it up, and you'll see analog gauges. That is something that most of the other trucks in this segment have moved away from. But we do have very simple, very crystal clear analog gauges with a little helper screen there in the middle. If you're one of those people that hates how analog gauges looks, this still has, or hates how digital gauges looks, this one still has the analog for you. Now, the base screen is still going to be an 8-inch unit, but the SV grade and up, that's pretty much all except for the base trim, are going to get this new 12.3-inch screen. It's a big upgrade over the outgoing 9-inch screen. It does have USB and USB-C down here, but you do have wireless Apple CarPlay and for the first time, wireless Android Auto. You used to only get wireless CarPlay on these Nissan systems. Now, this system might be new for the Frontier, but it's not exactly new for Nissan. If you've ever been in like the Nissan Armada from like 2021, this is basically that system. I believe that the Pathfinder still has a system like this, only on a 9-inch screen. It's a little bit old by Nissan standards, so it's not the new one that you'll find in the new Armada or the new Murano or the Aria. So it is a little bit laggy. It is a little bit annoying in the sense that we have this split screen here that you cannot make go away. It is always split screen. And the way that you customize it is here on this menu. You have to go into a separate menu. You can't just, like how Hyundai lets you, swipe to change what's on here. So you're going to probably leave whatever's on there and never change it. Like you can have a digital clock, which I think is kind of useless because you have other clocks in the vehicle. So I've been putting it on the 5-day weather. So it's definitely not my favorite infotainment system, but it is still technically considered an upgrade here on the Frontier. I do still like that you have a volume knob, you have a tuning knob as well, although even that I have kind of a problem with. I love having a tuning knob, but I want to show you how this works. When I try to tune the channels, it's going to pull up the sort of list of satellite channels. And then instead of, just kind of picking it, you either have to click on the screen to change the channel. So it's not as quick access as what a tuning knob would be. I wish it would just like be tuning as I'm doing that. Instead, it's just letting me scroll through the menus, which is not how I would want it to operate. We do have simple climate controls, dual zone, heated seats, and a heated steering wheel. No ventilated seats, as I mentioned. We do have 4-wheel drive. Our controls for that are right here. Just twist over for 4-wheel drive and then push in to get into the 4-wheel low. Not super complicated there. Our transmission is here with a little storage cubby here, cup holders here, and a wireless charger that is part of our SL trim here. We also have a 360-degree camera, although as you can see, the resolution is definitely not the best. We still have those stitch lines on the camera. We have the ability to kind of change the angle too, but again, those are some pretty crunchy graphics for 2025. In terms of passenger space, the Frontier is honestly pretty poor. You've got just over 33 inches of legroom back here in the rear. Pretty much everything else in this segment has more than that, including the Chevy Colorado and GMC Canyon, which I complained that the back seat was actually smaller than the previous generation, but this is in fact even smaller than that. You can see I don't have a lot of space for my legs here. I'm also very bolt upright in this seat. I don't have rear air vents. I do at least have a USB-C and a USB port, as well as a 115 volt outlet here. So I do at least have those niceties, but no air vents, not a lot of leg room either. And we do have just a little bit of storage underneath here as well. If I pull up on this seat, you can see I do have some underfloor storage, but it's definitely not massive. And now let's wrap up by getting the Frontier out on the road, and there's not really too much to talk about here. Nissan didn't really do anything to change the driving experience here. Under the hood, we still have a 3.8 liter naturally aspirated V6 engine. This is in fact the last naturally aspirated V6 engine, at least in terms of the sort of classic mid-size truck. The Ford Ranger, Chevy Colorado, GMC Canyon, and Toyota Tacoma have all switched to turbocharged 4-cylinder engines. I suppose you could count the Honda Ridgeline as a mid-size truck. That does still have a V6 engine, and you can still get a V6 engine under the hood of the Jeep Gladiator, although that is more sort of a niche truck that I wouldn't really consider a direct competitor to the Frontier. Now this engine is actually pretty good. It's not a very new engine, at least compared to some of the other engines in this class, but it makes 310 horsepower, which is definitely competitive in this class. 281 pound-feet of torque is definitely on the lower end. You know, that's just kind of the nature of having a bigger turbocharged 4-cylinder engine versus having a engine with no turbochargers and 6 cylinders like we have here. And that is going out through a 9-speed automatic transmission with rear-wheel drive or optional 4-wheel drive, which we have here on our vehicle. And I gotta say, I think the powertrain is probably my favorite element of the truck. A lot of the 4-cylinders in this class, including the Toyota and including the GM twins, are a little bit coarse. They're a little bit rough. They don't sound great, even though they are pretty good at being truck motors. They have tons of torque, which is good for towing and all of that kind of stuff. But when I put my foot down here in the Frontier, it just sounds pretty nice. It's very predictable. It does everything I need it to do. And that's something that I really can't say about some of the other modern contemporaries in this midsize class. The disadvantage is gonna come with fuel economy. It's not great. I think you're gonna get like 18 city, 24 highway with rear wheel drive. Those numbers go down to like 17 and 22 if you get 4-wheel drive. So really not great. I'm averaging about 17.6 in my 4-wheel drive model, so maybe I'll be able to beat that a little bit. The towing capacity has increased by about 500 pounds across the board. Maybe check the specific trims to see what your tow rating will be, but the max tow rating is now 7,150 pounds, which is really not bad for the midsize class. And despite this vehicle definitely feeling like a truck, it rides like a truck, especially if you're bouncing over some sort of rougher pavement. It's not uncomfortable, and we do have really thick glass windows, at least here on this SL trim, and it's pretty quiet in here. I gotta say, there's not a lot of road noise, even at highway speeds. Like, it's pretty calm and quiet in here. And, you know, the one thing is, although it is pretty comfortable, it doesn't feel as modern as some of its competitors. And what do I mean by that? The drivetrain has a lot of slop to it. You kind of feel it like disconnecting and connecting as you're on throttle, off throttle. The steering feels like it has super glue inside of the rack. It's just really heavy, but still very vague. It's not necessarily worse than anything else in this segment. It's a pickup truck. I don't expect, you know, sports steering here or anything like that. But it is really heavy, especially in parking lot maneuvers, or if you're trying to do a U-turn, which I'm going to try to do now. Pretty bad turning radius. Definitely having to move the steering wheel quite a bit. It's very heavy. And if you come from an old truck, let's say you're trading in a truck that's maybe like 2005 or older because you like to keep your truck a while, this might be something that you really like, because it'll feel more like your sort of old school truck, and it won't feel sort of like a modernized, they're trying to make it more car-like experience. So if that's what you're after, the Frontier might be the last truck that kind of delivers an experience like that. And at the very least, I can say at least it's unique in that regard. That's going to wrap up my time with the 2025 Nissan Frontier. Pricing for this truck is going to vary widely depending on what trim you get and what other options you want. You can get a base S King Cab 4x2 version of this truck for just over $32,000, making this still one of the cheapest options in the midsize segment. So if you just need something for work that's durable and brand new with a warranty, and you don't really care about modern creature comforts, although this does have some decently modern creature comforts, the Frontier is still a pretty good option for that. Now, this SL Crew Cab with the short wheelbase is about 45 grand. You're going to be spending about $500 extra, so $45,610 if you want this SL trim with 4-wheel drive and the long bed. So that is something to think about if you want a 4-door truck with the long bed. This stacks up not that well against some of the other options in this segment. You can spend about the same amount on a Chevy Colorado Z71, which I think is a more rugged truck. It's a more modern truck, and it's probably the one that I would buy. However, this is probably about $5,000 or $6,000 less than the equivalent Toyota Tacoma. Now, the Tacoma has better technology, a better engine. You have the available hybrid, which jacks up the price even more. But the Tacoma is a lot more expensive. So if you're just looking to get the best bang for your buck, the Nissan Frontier is out there. I don't think that this is the best truck in the segment. I don't think anybody is trying to say that the Frontier is somehow better than any of the other options here. But if you are looking for something with a little more classic feel that drives a little bit like an old school truck, just be aware that Nissan is still there for you. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this review of the 2025 Nissan Frontier. For more videos like it, be sure to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell to be alerted of our latest videos, and I'll see you next time.